Good morning, everybody. Yes, it's Thursday morning. Phumi Mashiko is here. I am here, and you are here. We're ready to start the day. Mm-hmm.
All you really need to start the day.
All you need.
And a cup of...
What is this? Like a cappuccino, right?
A cup of coffee. Cup of coffee.
I must tell you,
This one is really good.
It's a good coffee. I'm very excited. We've got an unbelievably busy burning platform later on. It's like it's going to be chock full of all kinds of opinionistas. People have lots to say about lots of things, and of course, you throw Phumi and I into that, and you've got your greatest fantasy of opinions being thrown around the room. And of course, we make them ready to serve so that you can just implement those opinions. If you're too busy in your day to think about your own opinion on things, we'll give you some.
This is the one to regurgitate.
We'll give you a bunch of them, and you can choose which one you think fits the best. I watched 2 videos this morning. A friend of mine in America sent me both. Sent me this one video of Javier Milei, who's the new Argentine president, who was laying out the case for free market economics, something which I don't think they've heard at Davos for, 20 years. Because it's become very cool and has remained cool for far too long for people to talk about state interventions and regulation and pitting man against woman and poor versus rich and man versus the planet. And suddenly this guy comes in and he's like, I got a couple of things to tell you about the lessons we've learned in Argentina over the last few years. And he goes all the way back to the 1850s. You know, there was a stage where Argentina was the richest country in the world, right? And then there was a stage not so long ago where they were the poorest country in the world. In fact, they had such hyperinflation that they made Zimbabwe look positively rich by comparison. And as a result of their experience in Argentina, he really makes a case for human progress, for the rights of life, liberty, and property. And he says that the biggest problem with the world when everything starts going wrong is state intervention and regulation. And then he explains why. And all these Davos World Economic Forum assholes sit there and they kind of find themselves being lectured by a guy who's won by a wide margin in Argentina. And I think they have to, he said basically, you can either rail against reality, try to convince yourself that reality is different, or you can look at the empirical data. And then he brings out charts. He shows you what, has happened to life expectancy in countries where the state intervenes too much. He shows you what happens where property rights are not respected. He shows you the economic data. And you can't argue with it.
I'm going to look for that video a little bit later and watch it right from the 10 seconds you showed me. And
he's combed his hair.
Yeah, he's combed his hair. He's wearing a jacket. He's also not shouting.
No, he's not shouting. He's not being.
He's very measured.
Very,
right?
and it's about 20 minutes. It's worth watching. You can find it on social media. I'm not going to play you.
I'm sure he's very measured. But Javier for me is he's like the Argentine version of Steve Bannon. And
do you mean that in a good or a bad way?
It just is.
Because usually if people bring up Steve Bannon, they mean it in a bad way.
No, in a just is way.
Okay.
It just is. Well, also because
for anyone who's struggling, Steve Bannon was Trump's election campaign manager for 2016.
And they really are the two of them for me are on the same continuum. So I'm very, very much looking forward to hearing that. But this year, Davos for me has been a little bit of a
just damn squib. Nobody cares. But also, they've got it so wrong. In fact, the whole theme of Davos, and I wouldn't normally pay attention to Davos. I only paid attention because this friend of mine sent me the Milei speech, and it's a standout. All the rest of it is the same old elitist conversation with elitists about elitist problems.
There is a deep fake
think they
video,
can solve
though.
things for the world, and
there is a deep fake video of Davos making the rounds of I don't know who that guy is, but I think he's probably like a YouTuber, and he's put himself at the podium in Davos and he says, I want to say sincerely from all of us, thank you very much. And it goes off. But it's so well done. When you first see it,
You think it's real.
You do a double take. You're like, who the hell is this guy?
Isn't that what you? If I sent you to Davos, or you decided to go there yourself and
I
make a speech? I
personally would not go to Davos because have you seen the thick snow?
When you say "fuck you," isn't that what you'd tell them? I think you would. And the thick snow, I'm sure there are worse problems in the world.
No. When I see that Davos and the way it looks there, I'm just like,
no, please, I'll take it. My brother and his kids and his wife just got back from skiing. I was like, God damn, it must be nice to have so much money. So yes, I would take Davos, thank you, but not to go and schmooze and hobnob with these people. And I like the fact that there are deep fakes of people saying "F you" to Davos, because I think a lot of us want to say that to these people. They're out of touch. And the theme for this year, unironically, is rebuilding trust, because what they've realized only too late at Davos is that over the last particularly 5 to 6 years, they have become so disconnected from reality and from the rest of us and from their desire to propagandize and bullshit us that we now regard them.
That tends to happen when you like private jets.
Yeah,
security,
correct. But you're telling all of us to stop driving cars.
Tends to happen. You do get
that
disassociated from reality.
And I'm glad that it's happening. And that theme tells you everything about how insecure they're feeling about their position in the world. These are the people who think they control everything, and they do control a lot of things, but they've lost the ability to persuade the rest of us. And I think it's interesting to remark upon only that, if nothing else. The other video that this friend of mine sent me was some, tribeswoman from South America. So they obviously, the right of center brought Javier Milei as their representative, and the left of center brought some tribeswoman from the same continent. But she went around going gong 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 along and then blowing into people's faces, which is a surefire way to spread disease. These are the same people who were telling us that we have a big, great reset and we need to worry about world pandemics. Do you remember them? And they've got a woman blowing in people's faces. It's just so ironic.
Yesterday, I watched a video of so there's a YouTube channel that we watch a lot of, and it's news. An Indian lady, Paki Sharma, I forgot what it's called. She started out with something else, but now it's called something else, and she is the main news editor. Amazing, like analysis, world news from a different perspective, from a different point of view, right? She really is quite fantastic. At the end of that video yesterday, I actually thought about the Great Reset, and yeah, it's happening. This video was about toy manufacturing in India and how India has basically, after the COVID pandemic, how they've reset toy manufacturing in their country, where something like 90% of all the world's toys come from
China.
Absolutely.
Like 90% of all of them
come from China. And so they, because of the kind of the disruption in supply chains and all of that kind of stuff, they used that to reset how India is positioned in the world in terms of toy making. So they created industrialized zones where they give incentives to toy makers, and lots of different incentives in terms of rent concessions, But what they also did was they put tariffs on import duties of toys coming into India. And now almost all their toys that are circulating in India are made in India, and they are now exporting toys as well. So they use that to reset a part of their economy. And I think a lot of people are doing that.
I think that's where perhaps you can call for what Milei was not calling for, which is a little bit of government interference in the economy, at least to make things competitive. Because we do live in a world now where China can make everything cheaper and faster, and they don't really care about labor or massive factories being built or destruction of the environment, any of the stupid policies that Western governments put into place. And we sometimes need to have cheap manufacturing. The corollary to that is that cheap manufacturing in another country destroys the local economy, the local manufacturing economy. I mean, look at
China is essentially the world's factory now.
Sure. But look at our fabric industry, for example, was decimated.
Textile.
The textile industry in this country was decimated once we started outsourcing that. And there is an argument for that. But I think by and large, almost anything, in particular our government, anything government touches turns to shit. So we've got to be very aware of that. And I think it's very interesting too that the world, I think, is starting to pivot in a direction that it hasn't for, I don't know, about like 40 years. Because we've been on more or less the same trajectory, politically, economically, socially, for at least let's say the last 20. And this is a definite about turn. You see it happening in places as diverse as Argentina and, France, for example. And there's going to be more of that. So just brace yourself. And I do think in America, they got to get ready for you saw the Iowa caucuses. I mean, what a whitewash. It was an absolute avalanche. If anybody was still holding out hope for a Nikki Haley or a Ron DeSantis, I've got bad news for you. Trump is walking this. And by the way, Biden, I just have to say, and again, this is not because I take delight in it, even though I think Biden is probably the worst president that America's ever had, because he's so goddamned old, he doesn't even know what's going on. But I do have to say this, that his approval ratings, and this is according to credible polls from moderate think tanks and proper research institutes, people who we would say normally are a good barometer of what's going on in society. I'm skeptical, like all of us are, about polls because they tend to be proffered by people who have an agenda.
Oh, polls.
Guess what Biden's
his
overall approval rating is the lowest in recorded history, 33%. Now, that means you just don't have a chance of re-election. And they're going with him again because it's too late now to change horses, right? And if you do, and it's Kamala, you're going to do even worse because she's even less popular than him, believe it or not. But the really frightening number is they asked Democrats, Republicans, and moderates in America, what do you think of the way Biden's handled the economy? His approval rating on this was 31%. That's lower even than Angie Mochecha's pass rate, which we're going to talk about too at some point this morning. So really not looking great for Biden. And then I see on the note of the matric pass rate, the Free State, 40% of matrics in the Free State didn't pass matric.
How are their numbers out?
That was released just yesterday by Umalusi or whatever it is. Umalusi. So I don't know what to make of that, but if that's correct,
I was woken up in the middle of the night.
Big problems.
By an SMS from the school because the IEB results are out, and this is my shout out to the boys from our school who 100% pass rate, not mark. 100% pass. That is quite something. Congratulations. But also, you know what? I have a very good friend who often talks to me about, he's a lawyer today, about his matric and how dismal it was because he had to repeat matric. And he's like, the best thing that could have ever happened to him was repeating that matric because it gave him a chance.
Well, it's not the end of the world,
to
right?
reset himself.
No, there's nothing wrong with repeating your matric. We have such a view. I mean, listen, we do have the easiest pass rate in any measurable stage of South Africa's history.
But I feel like we've created this monster in the heads of the kids about matric.
Definitely.
My niece is in matric this year. And over the December holiday, when she was visiting with us, on the one night, she woke up quite panic-stricken, just thinking about going into matric this year. And I was just like, oh, this is a monster. This is a monster. She is going to go into this year. Well, I hope not, because we've now spent lots of time kind of prepping and talking about it and whatever. But she was in December already freaking out about this year. when I'm just like, you must also have a little bit of fun. Your matric year is also supposed to be fun and memorable and all of those things, about because it's the last year in high school, and some of those friends you're never going to see again ever in your life.
And sometimes that's not a bad thing.
Those aren't friends,
Let's be
really,
fair.
are they?
All right, so a couple of things that are worth commenting on this morning. We can get into some of the big news stories around South Africa and politics and the burning platform a little bit later on. But I know you've got an agenda here this morning too, Pums. What's on your mind? You woke up in the dark this morning for the first time in ages. Nice.
Yeah.
Just being reminded that we're in a new year, but we've got the same old government.
In case people are wondering why I'm back in black today, it has happened.
Yes,
people.
and
It's what I've been prepping for all this time. I told you guys that's why. The other reason I always wore black is because even if you get dressed in the dark, everything you own matches. You just take one from the top, take one from the bottom.
You also did. You posted this very optimistic thing at the beginning of the year. You were like, "I'm going to bring color back into the wardrobe." You remember? So that's obviously been shelved thanks to load shedding.
You in the dark, you can't really be adventurous. Okay, you must just, because I don't know what it looks like, whatever. But if it's black, I know exactly what I'm getting. But I do have this. See, I do have this.
Okay,
a lot of bright
all right.
colors.
Now we got a bit of colors.
Jesus.
Okay, I like it. Very good. We've also
so J.R. Ewing. We've got a J.R. Ewing.
There's a J.R. Ewing in the comments. Oh my God. J.R. Ewing says, let me rephrase. About 40% of the Free State grade 10s did not pass. Yes, that's correct.
Grade 10s. So grade 10s.
Sorry, not matrics. Grade 10s. That's sorry, quite right. So
wow.
That's disgusting. Let me tell you, I always thought that our dumbest province was the Eastern Cape. Turns out it's the Free State.
Although that is also a failure of the teaching.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I do think
it is a failure of the teachers.
Pums, how do you fail if the pass rate's 35%?
Hence, it is the failure of the teaching.
I don't know. I'm not so sure. I think that if you have
children children learn instinctively. We are learners. But
I'm sorry.
Everything about growing up is about learning.
I think that's nonsense.
It is the failure of
Here's the
teaching.
device. This is the device. This phone will allow any kid anywhere, and they all have a smartphone these days, especially by grade 10. Okay? There's just no excuse.
No.
You can go online. You can learn anything you want. They do not want to learn. These are disasters.
No, I disagree with you. You don't think so? It's a failure of the adults in the system. They are failing these children. It is a failure of the adults in the system. It is not those children.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think you can fill the gaps yourself if you are a self-motivated child. And I was not a hard worker at school at all, but it didn't take much. I studied at the last minute. I'm not an exceptional person. I really am not. I think I'm pretty bang average on most things, especially when it came to maths and things like that. I only learned to do maths. I swear to God, I only learned to do maths in matric. Up to then, I had coasted and just squeaked through on maths and physics. I'd always liked chemistry, but suddenly in matric, I applied myself. It had nothing to do with the teachers. I'd love to give them credit. And then I suddenly did well. So
trust me. And it's so like with all raising of children, the problem does not start at grade 10. It is the adults who have failed these children in the system.
Well, where I will agree with you is that school started yesterday, and tons of kids were suddenly being ferried around, parents scrambling to make a plan because they hadn't thought about this until yesterday. Now, that's adults failing. And it's not the teachers, because I'm very happy to go hard at teachers. I don't think teachers are as great as they could be. There are obviously exceptions to that rule, but a lot of teachers are just plodders, and they go for an easy job where you get lots of holidays and you get a guaranteed salary. And a lot of teachers are just very ordinary, very dreary people. Really. I think that the exceptions to that rule are few and far between. But parents are way worse. What kind of a parent wakes up on the day that you have to take your kids back to school suddenly, it's like they've woken up from a drunken stupor. And no, we've got to place our kids in the school. Suddenly there's no places, and suddenly it's the education department's fault. Now, I don't mind, just like I don't mind going at teachers, I don't mind going at government. And there is a lot to be desired with government. And you can complain that they haven't built any new schools. You can complain that they haven't made classes bigger and better. But honestly, this is parents. This lays, this whole thing is fairly and squarely at the parents' feet. If your kid doesn't have a school place to go to because you as a parent only woke up now, halfway through January, that's on you.
Adults in the system have failed these children.
Yeah, but let's be specific. Which adults?
All of them. All of them.
I don't know.
Whether it is so here in Gauteng, I don't know if it is the same in all other provinces. Actually, I know it's not. But here in Gauteng, to get into a school, into government school, there's a central portal that people have to, I think in April or May, it opens up for grade 8s and grade 1s, and you submit all of your documents on this portal, and the system is supposed to place you at the most optimal school. So depending on where you live and your income, all of that kind of stuff. That system is a sham. That system is a sham and a shambles. So some of these parents who are running around yesterday, the system also hasn't placed them, right? So you haven't received the documentation. You don't know where to take your child. Bullshit system.
And what, you wait until the first day of school to have a problem?
Well, actually, when it is the first day of school, then more people in the department are scrambling to help you. Then they are scrambling to help you in November. Then they are scrambling to help you in December. More people on the first day of school are scrambling to help you. That is also. Listen, I don't want to complain about this thing. Let's talk about something else.
I saw some very cute footage on the news yesterday. I'm trying to watch the news again just so I can see what the media are reporting on. You need
Listen to the radio.
I don't. I can't. That I can't do. That's a bridge too far. But I will occasionally watch TV news, and they had all these very cute stories in the news about the first day back at school, or first day of school for the grade 1s, and that's cute to see. And I see these little kids, and they're getting in there, and they're excited, and they're wearing their brand new uniform. They're smiling, and they,
toothless smiles.
I know, they're so cute, and I think that's awesome. And I hope that all of these kids ride it out until matric, because we have a huge dropout rate. The worst part of this, and it wasn't mentioned in the news report, but we brought it up the other day on the show, is that there are kids who were late for grade 10, 11, and 12 because they were dropping their own kids off at school.
Wow.
That's a pretty damning indictment on our society in South Africa.
That's grim.
Very. Okay. Yonda says, to be fair, it's also, again, the fault of the government system. Ever since it was changed, it's been a mess. So agreeing with you there.
It is so we have in our family, my little nephew, who's now 16 months. He started play school.
Jeez, 16 months, hey. Wow. Holy shit.
Little person in play school. Kana was in grade 10. And so we've got the whole gamut there.
Wow. Okay, let's look at some of the stuff that's going on here. We've got to talk about P. Diddy just now.
Yes, please.
And we got to talk about this PhD scandal. But you want to talk about the God of truth, light, and music and poetry, Apollo.
Listen.
This excites me. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to say about Apollo?
Last week, I told you this is going to be like a hectic year. But if ever there was in all of the celestial beings shaking the tables this year, he's arrived this year shaking the table. Because all of these things are interconnected, right? Whether it is PhD scandals coming to light, whether it is like Cat Williams and every conspiracy theory in the world, whether the P. Diddy shaking the table every damn week. So I'm just saying, ready yourself, people. Ready yourself. I didn't know that is. So I knew that Apollo was the god of poetry and music. I did not know that part of that was truth and light.
Yes. Yeah. Apollo is my favorite god of the ancient Greeks.
Yeah, music.
Yeah, but also, like all the gods, had relationships with humans at various points and produced progeny. And there's the story of, I think it's Icarus. No, Icarus is a different story. It was his son who rode his chariot too fast and too hard and burnt all of North Africa and turned it into a desert. I mean, these myths that I wish I was more au fait with it now, but the last time I read it was probably about 10 years ago. But I love Apollo. Apollo is the best of all the gods. It just seems like he has the most fun. His sister Aphrodite is very serious.
Listen.
Sorry. Apollo and, is it Aphrodite? No. Apollo and Artemis. Not Aphrodite. Artemis is his sister.
This year is just like it's the year of the dragon. It is also truth, my friends. The truth.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Like, people can't help themselves. People can't help themselves. We spoke about the scandal with Mbalula coming out and just saying outright, and we're all shocked.
Right.
At the revelation. And more than the revelation, I think we're all shocked that he said it out loud, that he said the silent parts out loud. But this is it. It's the truth, my friends. It's the truth. It's coming at you hard and fast this year from every corner, every neck of the woods.
Carl says, I'm a proud dad of grade 2 and a tiny one on preschool. I don't see why we must see everyone else's kids on Facebook, for fuck's sake. I think it's quite cute. So I've got a group of friends on WhatsApp. No, look.
Carl.
I don't have kids. I don't have kids, but I like this. So I've got a group.
I love it.
Yeah, I got a group of friends here, and they were all sending pictures of all their kids on the first day back at school or the first day of school, and like old family friends and people who I've known since varsity. And it's cool to see.
It's like the sorbet in your meal. It's just a timeline cleanser. It's like when you see the kitten, it just makes it a little bit better, right? So the cute kids are meant to cleanse the timeline of all that like,
horrible shit,
all that ratchetness that's out there.
So what is the story with P. Diddy? You got to fill me in on this. I don't know anything about this. I know that he came up in the Cat Williams podcast, but what's the real deal here? Help me understand.
This is the year where
you said truth.
All of P. Diddy's
the small shit
is coming out to light, and this year will not end without P. Diddy being cancelled, my friends. So after the big scandal with the sex allegations, there have been scandal after scandal coming out of P. Diddy's closet. Now there's a gang rape scandal.
Oh, Jesus.
That's out there. Diageo has bought him out of his, he had a tequila. You want a tequila. He had a tequila.
Yeah.
Diageo has bought him out of that and bought him out of his Ciroc deal. So those two spirits that they've bought him out. They want nothing to do with P. Diddy.
But that's nice payout for him. He doesn't care.
Watch the space. I think the IRS is coming for him.
Oh, God. Okay. All right. Okay.
But yesterday in The Source, they've been talking about an explosive audio that has been brought into evidence in the case of the murder of Tupac.
Oh, shit. We thought that one had been put to bed.
Diddy's involvement in that shit.
Oh, boy. Okay.
All these many years later. This was...
I thought it was Jada. Didn't we decide it was Will Smith and Jada? No. Oh, man.
No, they just got like...
Jesus.
Yeah, listen. P. Diddy, this is the year P. Diddy is getting cancelled. It's finally happening, my friends. It's finally happening. But the light and the truth in that man's world.
Okay, so
all over the place.
That's going to be interesting to watch.
But so then, obviously, when these kind of stories come out, you get in a rabbit hole. So now I'm in a rabbit hole, in a P. Diddy rabbit hole. Because then, as I'm like reading all of the stuff, I'm thinking to myself, if P. Diddy got cancelled, would I really miss him?
So you
like,
have to go back.
So I had to go look. What
Yeah.
is P. Diddy music? But I wouldn't miss P. Diddy's music. Because also, it's not his music. He's just a feature, a very prominent feature in almost all of the stuff. But you know what I did find out about P. Diddy's past?
What?
Have you seen the film American Gangster with Denzel Washington?
Yes.
About Frank Lucas.
Yeah, sure.
Frank Lucas, who is a very real person, who is a big gangster in Harlem,
Yes.
all of that. P. Diddy's connection to Frank Lucas?
Really?
His dad was a very big Frank Lucas associate.
Oh, shit. So he was a gangster from birth.
Imagine. This was my biggest revelation about P. Diddy. The most interesting thing about him in my rabbit hole about P. Diddy yesterday was what? P. Diddy and Frank Lucas?
So this is interesting.
Not even 6 degrees of separation there, hey?
Domenico, who said earlier some very nice comments about you, and I haven't seen Domenico in the comments before, so I'm making special notes here. And Mutande Kaluzi as well, who are both in the comments section for the first time. But
welcome, friends.
Apparently, Cat Williams blew Hollywood up. Even Oprah's taking heat. What did he have to say? What happened about
Oprah?
He say?
He did not say anything about Oprah.
Tell us about Oprah.
I am one of the 50 million views of that podcast.
I haven't yet. I got to get into it.
Listen, 2 hours and 43 minutes or something ridiculous like that.
If it's worth it, if they're spitting,
it doesn't feel like
bombs,
2 hours.
Then it's good.
Doesn't feel like 2 hours and 43 minutes though. But man, I don't remember him saying anything about Oprah. What did he say about Oprah?
I don't know. So Dominica's got to tell us.
You better dude, Cat Williams had shit to talk about everybody.
TL wants to know, hey Phumi, what are your thoughts on the Thabi Leoka situation?
This is the PhD scandal.
Right. So let's talk about this because presidential advisor, right?
On one of.
Okay. So
one of the 17 different.
Right. Because our president has so many goddamn advisors. He doesn't have his own brain involved in any of these decisions. He just gets told what to do by his advisors.
What decisions has our president made?
None.
Okay, good.
Probably only around his own businesses. Anyway, so tell me what happened here with this Thabo Leoka. Thabi, sorry.
So a story broke on BD Live a couple of days ago that Thabi Leoka, who is commonly referred to as, this is another doctor scandal. Dr. Thabi Leoka.
Okay.
Actually does not have a PhD from LSE, London School of Economics.
Do these guys really think they can get away with this?
To verify this. So let's just start. Besides being on the advisory panel in the presidency, she has also been on the board of Corruption Watch. I don't think she's on there anymore. She's been MTN board. And Remgro, she was on the Remgro board last year. And this is where this whole thing kind of fell apart. It's Remgro that kind of exposed all of this. And so the scandal breaks. BD Live puts out this article saying they were unable to verify her PhD. In fact, they said they were unable to verify her qualifications, which also then inferred that her master's and undergrad. But they have since come back to clarify that no, her master's, they were able to qualify but it's the PhD that they have no record of, and they couldn't find her. Then she went on Clement Manyatela's show, radio. She went on the show and she armed and ahed about it and talked about changing her name. Name changes. Maybe that's why they were using the name change. She's doubled down. I cannot for that. So it turns out she does have a master's from LSE. Why lie about the PhD? She also did say very much a la Tinder swindler, that people are after her.
Oh yeah, that's a big
That's
thing
how
now,
this
'cause
whole
she's so
thing
important.
comes out. But the biggest shocker of all of these things for me is the statement from the presidency that because she is an advisor and not in a statutory body, they never had a need to vet her PhD.
Do we know whether any of the decisions?
So what does that mean?
No, but
The advisors in the
okay.
presidency are not vetted.
But I don't actually care about people's qualifications. So I'm completely different to everyone else in this respect, because I wouldn't hire someone based on their degree. I wouldn't, unless, I mean, if I had a business in engineering or I was a hospital manager hiring doctors, then I would have to check that stuff. But in our business, and in many businesses in this economy, we don't need to know what people's credentials are, because if they're capable and they have the right attitude and personality, that counts way more than what degrees they have. You know this. You've been an advisor and a consultant and an HR person. You've done all of this.
Yeah, but
you know.
dude.
No. So my point is, let's cut to
Not
the chase.
in economics to the president.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to get to, because if you are advising the president, and we need to know which bits of advice were turned into policy as a result of Thabi's advice, and then we can measure whether or not she has any value. Because if, let's say she bullshits about her doctorate, but she's got a master's, and let's say she gave...
So why lie about the doctorate?
That's a whole separate issue. But if someone is giving advice and it's good advice, and when it's implemented, it creates better conditions, I don't care what your degree is. If, however, you haven't given good advice, you've given shit advice, and people have implemented and it's made things worse, then you must be fired. Even if you have 3 doctorates, right? Right? I mean, I'm judging you by the results. I don't actually give a damn about the process. And we've got this idea. You mentioned matric earlier and what an issue it is to so many people in this country, because we've got this idea that credentials and credentialism is more important than your actual ability to produce results.
Look, I agree with you to an extent. I'm just saying, to be an economics advisor to the president with suspicion.
Well, have you seen this cabinet? Okay, but I mean, have you seen our ministers? Have you seen our ministers in cabinet? These are not people who are considered qualified.
And hence we are in the shit we're in.
Not because the ministers don't have doctorates. It's because they've got shit attitudes and they're grasping, servile thieves.
But they also don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, but I don't think any amount of education could make Imtiaz Patel a more moral person, or Pravin Gordon for that matter, or take your pick. Pick a minister. Tulas Nasi.
Their job is not morality.
No, but
their job is not morality.
It's an important part of what they have to do. And furthermore, I would be more interested in their attitude, their ethical framework.
So you say
their
that
actual
though,
personality.
You say that though about many being so obsessed with some kind of paper qualification.
We are.
I've been looking at online. I'm looking for a course in I don't know. I think like cake decorating. It's one of my new favorite things currently, is like baking and whatever.
Fair enough.
And I was thinking I'd really like to do a short course just to kind of get my skills up, because that's a pretty intricate skill. It's not like following a recipe, right?
It's a good one.
Woo! Yo, I have been gobsmacked at the cost of a 3-day part-time cake decorating.
And don't you think you could do better by watching YouTube videos? Because it's not like anyone's going to say, where's your cake decorating certificate? You're not going to go work for a hotel.
Well, but also I wondered, at this cost, I wondered what that does for people who work at a Fornos or who work in small bakeries like at the patisserie down the road who do, and I wondered if this also closes opportunity for people who truly have a little bit of talent and with enough practice.
This is not an argument against my position, though. But
we are also talking about decorating cakes and not like policy for example, advisory for a president.
So Carlos says, gee, we can't have someone in a role like that who commits fraud, because that's what it is, right? If you
Absolutely.
Don't apply the soft bigotry here. I'm not. I agree. And I did just say an ethical framework, morals. And that comes into lying about your Stevie. It's not. I think people are upset that this person doesn't have a doctorate, right?
No, I don't know.
Of that this person lied about having a doctorate.
I think it's the full gamut. I think it is the full gamut. It is the why lie? When you also have a master's, why lie about why is it so important to be Dr. Leoka? Why lie?
Okay.
It is also about at that level of advisory in such an important role in a country that has a shambles for an economy.
I'm not going to disagree.
Why not vet it? Why why is it not vetted? Why? I mean,
well, because
it's all of it is outrageous.
Because
all of it is outrageous.
Because we've got amateur government. That's what they are. They're a bunch of amateurs who've won a popularity contest, like most governments in the world, and therefore you're not going to get the best people.
So this is my moment to. Today,
by the way, I just want to say, do your cake thing watch YouTube videos. You don't need to pay money to see.
I do watch cake.
You do not need to go on a course and spend a fortune, because they are going to charge you a fortune.
I'm not going to spend a fortune.
Who cares if you get it wrong 50 times? That's how you become a better cake decorator, for heaven's sake.
I am not going to spend the fortune. I don't have the fortune to spend.
It's just
but I do. This is my moment.
You can test out your shit cakes on me, all right? How about that?
The cakes themselves are great.
Okay.
It's the decorating I'm worried about.
Then bring them to me. I'll give you an appraisal. You don't need to waste your money on these courses.
But so this is my moment to reference to use a quote from Cat Williams's, because I'm finding every day I must find at least one time. He had so many gems.
Okay.
But this one is today's one. Liars lie.
Yes.
Liars lie.
Right. Yes.
Why lie? Liars lie, sir.
100% spot on correct. Thank you very much. All right.
Are we gonna do news headlines? So that is a bit of a news headline, though.
That's a good one. So France's Macron has shifted to the right on schools and birth rate, and mostly because he has to at this stage. Let's be fair. Macron is not doing this because he has suddenly seen the light, because he suddenly decided to modify his position, and he's become more attentive to what the data is showing him. He's become attentive to popularity polls. He's become attentive to approval ratings. That's all. So what has he done? So this is the story.
His term is done. Why is he still care?
Well, of course he cares.
This is when you do the shit, like all the stuff you want.
Everybody says that, but
it doesn't matter now.
These politicians are addicted to being loved. He has promoted uniforms in schools, a crackdown on drug gangs, and steps to boost France's declining birth rate. Now,
what are the steps to boost the birth rate?
Well, you know
what are they giving people like time off work?
Well, you could start off by making it less easy to get divorces and abortions and that kind of thing, if you're a fundamentalist on that front. But you can also do things that encourage the family rather than encourage individual liberties. And those are not policies which France is famous for. And I think there are tax breaks that you can give to parents who have more than 2 kids. There are all kinds of incentives you can build into the system. What he's doing is that he is pissing off the left wing. Commentators in the left have deplored his apparent shift from the crafted political balance of recent years, but they said they suspected all along where his heart lay was in the right. Commentators on the right said they were delighted by his apparent conversion to their views, but suspected it was all a sham. He also suggested a compulsory period of civic service for 16-year-olds. Now,
16-year-olds, wow.
Good idea, right?
I am a fan of civic service. You know this. I am a big fan, but 16-year-olds.
Why not? Doesn't mean that they have to skip school or anything. They can do this during their holidays. You spend one day of your holiday helping old ladies cross the street, tidying up the gardens of the public parks. Why not?
Helping old ladies cross
Yeah.
the street.
Have you seen what Paris looks like these days? It's nowhere near what it should look like. So
Listen, they've got bed bugs.
bed bugs. I think that's still going on, right?
That is, bed bugs are one of those things that are
No.
once it happens to you, it takes a long time to get rid of it.
The world's most popular YouTuber, MrBeast, has shared a full video on X for the first time, having previously said that even 1 billion views would not make it worth his while. The star has previously made his material available to his 231 million subscribers on YouTube. He said that he's now trying X because he's super curious about how much advertising revenue it will make.
Wait,
his U-turn,
200 and how much million?
he's got 231 million subscribers on YouTube.
No ways.
Yep. His U-turn is a boost for the struggling social media platform. Owner Elon Musk has tried various strategies to boost the business since buying it in October. These include sharing advertising revenue with high-profile creators, something that other sites, including YouTube, already do. So he's also keen on X. X is going to become, which it already is for many people, the source of news, but also the source of all kinds of content, especially if they share revenue with the creators. That's the key to YouTube's success. No one would be posting shit on YouTube if they owned it and if they were the only ones able to monetize it, right? Makes sense. This is the last story.
YouTube, YouTube really is like, it is the everything. It's like, that is the one thing. We may not have the hoverboards from Back to the Future, but YouTube is a close second. It kind of makes up. YouTube is a close second. Like this stuff you see on YouTube. I love YouTube.
I love it too, but you must do your cake decoration there. That's what everybody's saying in the comments. One last quick news story, and I really don't think we can comment too much on this now because it's probably more interesting for the Burning Platform. But the IEC has barred Jacob Zuma from contesting the 2024 elections.
What does that mean, has barred him?
Well, his MK party can obviously run in the elections.
Okay.
They can register if they pay their fees and they get on the ballot. That's fine. But he can't be president. Why? Because we have a rule in our constitution that if you have a criminal record, you cannot be president of the country.
So what does that mean for Patriotic Alliance and Gates and McKenzie?
This you may well ask. He can never be president. So Gates and McKenzie, for the same reasons, because he has a criminal record, even if it's one that has now had some time and some water's gone under the bridge and so on, can't be president if you have a criminal record. I just wish that anyone in politics who has a criminal conviction, I wish that all of those people would be barred from politics. But I don't make the rules. So the Independent Electoral Commission cited Section 47E of our Constitution, which bars anyone who is convicted and sentenced to more than 12 months imprisonment without the option of a fine from holding public office. Section further states that the disqualification under this paragraph ends 5 years after the sentence has been completed, but obviously
okay.
So it does run out.
Okay.
And I think Gatens then would have run out.
Yeah.
But it still bars Zuma since he's not finished 5 years out of jail. That means that he will have to try his luck in the 2029 general elections. How old is he now?
81.
So by 2020, he will be in his late 80s by then. Got too many old people in politics, man. Way too many old people. So there's some news stories for you. That's enough news for this morning. And then you wanted to talk about something else in the music business. Thandiswa Marwari.
Thandiswa Mazwai.
Mazwai. Why does it say someone spelled
Somebody spelled it wrong. Thandiswa Mazwai.
What about Thandiswa Mazwai?
Who is one of my favorite
I love her
South
too.
African
I
musicians.
don't have much to say about her sister, but yeah.
Hi, man. She was in DC 2 days ago recording a Tiny Desk concert. So very soon NPR will put that out. How lovely for her and for us.
Good.
But it also got me thinking about these kinds of do you think we could do some stuff like that locally? Like, who would be your top 3 if you were to do like a
You're asking
tiny
me.
disc?
I don't know. I'm so out of the music scene at the moment. I stopped paying attention to this when I stopped doing music radio. So
Really?
the last time, but ironically, whenever I get into an Uber or I hear radio, they're playing the same songs I was playing on radio 10 years ago. So I don't know how much has changed. I don't know what else is new. I find it very sad and depressing that someone like Taylor Swift should be dominating things in such a big way. It means there's obviously nothing else going on because she's not that good. She's just not.
South Africa has got a very exciting music
I know
landscape.
I'm a piano's taken off, and that's a worldwide phenomenon. I know that our music is the flavor of the moment. I know that. I get that. But I just don't know anything. I don't know enough to be able to comment on the music business at the moment. And people ask me because they remember me from Idols, and I'm like, I don't have anything to do with the music industry. And I'm so out of touch on that one. I'm not even paying attention. So I would take your advice.
Listen, tiny disc. So
explain the concept.
The concept of, okay, so NPR has this concept where they bring in musicians, and it's a little bit like MTV Unplugged used to be.
Oh wow.
But it's a mini concert. It's in an office setup, hence tiny desk, right? Because it's all man, and it's very short because NPR is big in with podcasts and all of that kind of stuff. So I think they get to do like 5 songs. And it is just it's a nice, intimate, small session, which is just a little bit of a departure from all of the other stuff that's out there.
Sounds amazing.
Unbelievable. And I really, really, really cannot wait to see Thandiswa's Tiny Desk.
So when does it come out?
I don't know, actually. She hasn't talked about that. But when she first kind of tweeted about it to say, ooh, she's been in America. She did a performance in New York. And then she went to record this Tiny Desk. It's going to be unbelievable. She's got a new album coming out as well soon.
Very good.
I love to see it. I love to see it for her. And the thing about Tiny Desk, also because it's online, is it also opens up artists to a whole new audience that may never get to hear her stuff.
I didn't even know that NPR, which is National Public Radio, did things like this. I'm out of it.
Gareth.
Sorry, I don't know.
Listen,
I know they do lots of good podcasts.
It's on YouTube, Baba.
All right.
So
there we go.
Go look for Tiny Desk. There is a wonderful Tiny Desk concert with Asha Raymond. He did one.
Thabo Leoka says in the comments, I love Tiny Desk concerts. You should check out Scarface. It was unbelievable. I used to love Scarface. Lord, please murder my enemies. Burn them at 1,000 degrees. And Lord, please let me make more cheese because I ain't quite ready to leave.
Oh, yeah. Google it. I mean, I think they've been doing it for a couple of years now. And it really is just...
Yeah, Sanela's got suggestions for you, Phumi. Sanela says, Zonke would be amazing.
Yes.
Mandisi Diantisi. Sorry.
Yeah, Mandisi. Yeah, when he's got a... Langa Mavuso would be amazing.
All right. Some interesting comments here about these Tiny Desk concerts. You see, you guys are filling me in. I don't know a lot of this stuff. I really don't.
The Tiny Desk concerts are just magnificent.
By the way, there's some comments here which you may want to respond to. Ted says, we were talking about politicians being too old. So Ted says there should be a 55-year age limit to participating in politics in major positions. 55? Maybe a bit young. 55 is still a bit young. But David says, Ted, you're 100% correct. Age of retirement is 65. Retire the fuckers. Well, if you expect the people in private enterprise, in corporations to retire, and our mandatory retirement age is 65, I think.
Is it 65?
I think so. Then we shouldn't allow politicians to carry on past 65 either. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You can't have politicians exempting themselves where every other person in a job has to leave at 65. So must they.
Listen, have you seen all those videos of Gwede Mantashe asleep?
Oh my God.
And all
During
these like
Cyril's speech,
ANC things. And
he's
it's just
so
like,
old.
stay home, old man.
He's old,
Stay
he's
home.
fat, and he's drunk. A great combination.
Stay home, old man.
Yeah.
There should be an age limit. I agree. There should be an age
Like,
limit.
by the time you're 75, you should be chilling. I mean, you've earned it.
Surely even you yourself, by the time you get to that 70, you must also feel like,
Yeah, you don't want to be you don't want to be working so hard. There's nothing wrong with you doing. So a friend of mine was out here from London. I went to see him, and he was at his parents' place because they still live here. And his parents are in their mid to late 70s. His dad is doing consulting and stuff, which he does from home, which is great. You can do that. You still have
consulting.
You have a
consulting
contribution
is
to
a
make.
great
Right.
exactly for old people. Consulting, Mara full time.
No, you shouldn't be going. You shouldn't be going into the office every day. It's not necessary. Really.
I mean, I am half that age, and I already have like a short. Like I already can't stand a lot of things that happen in meetings.
Yeah,
and I know it's because I'm simply just too old for some of that bullshit.
I mean, Sean says for executives in most corporates, the compulsory retirement age is 60.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you get people who are extremely good at 60 or 70, and you get people who are not. It depends on the individual, but I think if they're going to create a mandatory retirement age, then it should be for everybody.
I do not think
no exceptions.
that waking up early, having long 16-hour days, being in meetings that should be emails, all of that.
No,
shit.
you don't want to do that. It's not right. I just want to play this quickly because Zizi Kodwa, can I just...
Okay, but I want to tell you this. If you're going to start anyway with the tiny desk.
Oh, yeah?
Sting and Shaggy. Okay, Zizi Kodwa.
Well, like, this is not even that important, but Zizi Kodwa was like coaching Bafana. And Bafana are really a perfect metaphor for our country at the moment, the way it's being run.
Why people should retire, like Danny Jordan should retire.
But these guys can't win. They just can't win. They're just shit. So here's Zizi Kodwa being their coach. I mean, of all the people in the whole world. So here he is.
There is, for me, a great opportunity for me to progress beyond the group stages.
I'm not going to play the whole clip because you can't really hear him. It's just he's doing what a politician does. They walk into any situation and think they can offer valuable advice. So, I mean, really, like, we need him. Imagine how dejected those guys feel. First of all, they've lost, right? They're out. They've performed piss poorly, to put it mildly. Then
they're not out yet.
As an additional punishment, they have to sit there and be lectured by this guy who's never done anything remarkable in his life. Am I wrong?
Aye, man. Shame.
Oh, my God. All right. That's probably why they played so cuck.
Although Spain did lose their opening match in the World Cup and they went on to win that World Cup.
Please. I don't know what to make.
I'm just saying.
We've tried everything with this Bafana team, haven't we? We've tried international coaches. We've tried local coaches. We've tried giving them more money. We've tried incentivizing them. It's because football in this country is just so badly managed, like so many other things. So I'm not going to comment on that. Otherwise, I'm doing what Zizi Kodwa's doing. But it's
Sugar Shabalala says, I've accepted that in my lifetime, I'll never be made happy by Bafana Bafana.
Correct. We've just given up on them, like we've given up on service delivery. That's what we've done. It's exactly the same thing. So Steve says, turning 60, still doing 12 to 15 plus hours a day, but it's from home. Will work till the day of my funeral. That's good. But if you can manage it. I mean, I like the idea of people enjoying their lives at a certain stage of their life trajectory. You need to sometimes enjoy your life, spend time with the grandchildren, that kind of thing. But
do a little cake decorating.
If you want to work and you have something to offer, you will be useful to society until your dying day. You just have to find the circumstances that match that stage of your life.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm not saying that everyone over...
Steve, although 15-hour days are... I mean, 15-hour days, even if you're like 45, I just...
All right, it's 7. We've got to take a break. And then when we come back, it is the burning platform. Don't go anywhere. CliffCentral.com. It is Thursday, the 18th of January. More on the way with the burning platform next.
Boy with 70%
All right, let's get into it. We have a busy burning platform for you this morning. Phumi Mashiko is here with me, as always. You're the only sensible voice on the burning platform
That is
when it's just
true.
me and her. No, it's true.
Do we have just us on the burning platform? No,
No.
we don't. We
Oh my
always
God.
have friends.
No, so this morning we have
we
lots
always
of
have friends.
So Kanthan will be joining us in just a moment or two. It's back to the school run for him from now because schools have started. But the burning platform with Phumi Mashiko, Kanthan, Pillay, and I this morning, we're also joined by Koketso Resane, who is a conservative social commentator and business analyst currently working in the healthcare, informatics, and diagnostics industry. But that's not why we have him here this morning. We have him here to talk about a bunch of things. Koketso, nice to see you. How are you? You good?
I think I'm all right. Good to be
Well,
in
don't
the
be too
studio.
enthusiastic.
Listen, end of year fatigue does slip over into January, so there's
Oh,
that.
come on. You can't start with that.
Yeah.
For me, just
Suga.
read him the riot act. You got to
Suga.
start with some energy. Come on, Koketso.
When it's the 18th of January,
Yeah.
you cannot be Suga.
Unbelievable.
Get out of here.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
you are
allowed.
not allowed.
I'm allowed.
You must bring energy to the studio and
Yeah.
All right, well, let's
on the 18th of January, end of year fatigue spill over.
let's not waste any time.
I have no
You want to talk about
empathy.
the political landscape in the run up to the elections. I sent Phumi a bunch of things yesterday that were reported on people's attitudes to certain things, how optimistic they are about the future of the country, party political stuff.
Violence.
Violence. Yeah, the
Potential
potential
for
propensity we have for violence. What are you feeling at the moment? I mean, I know you're personally feeling like spillover from last year in terms of fatigue, but let's talk about how the country's feeling right now. What are your barometers telling you?
Yeah, quite an odd one. Every week we have a new political party opening up. It
Oh
seems.
my God. How long is this ballot paper going to be?
That's one of the things I actually want to bring up. Funny that you ask, because I don't think it's being considered logistically on how we're going to fit all these parties into a sizable ballot, because those who've been to the ballot will know that you kind of have to mark your X and then you have to fold the thing and put it inside of a box, right? So if there's that many parties, how many folds do you have to make to actually put this inside of the box? You know,
and then we'll have 5 ballot papers per box.
Yeah. Then there's that as well. So,
guys, it's a small price to pay for participation.
Well, not necessarily.
No, if you're printing an A4 diary for everybody, and you have to page 203 for the political party of your choice, that's almost counterproductive to democracy. People just won't vote. Don't you think?
No.
It's another obstacle.
Well, what we need is in order for our democracy to remain viable and for people to believe that the democracy is actually working, we need a sizable number of people showing up to the ballots. Because the minute people are not showing up, if they check out of the system, then we spoke about the potential for violence. Then they feel, because that's what an election does. An election is a valve. It's like a stop valve that lets out the pressure in the system. So, if people don't show up to vote, then they feel disgruntled, not just about who is in charge, but about the entire system. And then the pressure builds up, and then you have violence.
Well, Viasan says you can only fold a piece of paper 7 times. Any piece of paper, no matter how big it is. So that's an interesting point. And then Azalea says the ballot paper is going to look like your till slip from Food Lovers Market.
Look, I'll take the Food Lovers Market one over the one from Clicks because of the number at the bottom. Let's
be practical for a second. Pumi's very strong about the idea that we should have space on a ballot paper for all these parties and that we should have choices and options and people should feel represented. But if we had it your way, how would you separate the wheat from the chaff? The non-serious parties. You know, our producers, Dori and Ryan, were on a call with me yesterday, and they both said, you know that the KISS party has contested every election.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Since 1994, the KISS party, you've never had a single representative in any ward, municipality, or parliament, ever. What's the point? First of all, who's funding them? What a waste of money. Second of all, do we need to have them on the ballot now? I mean, I understand what you're saying, Pums, but surely if you have no chance whatsoever of getting a single seat in any representative body, why should you be allowed to participate? It's just a waste of people's time. How would you separate them?
Well, let me put it this way. The easy answer would be to simply raise the requirements for what you need to put your party on the ballot. I think right now the requirement is you must front something like 300,000 Rand, give or take. So that's all it takes really to.
Well, we can ask Kanthan. He did it. We can ask him what the basic. I think you need 20. Come in here, Kanthan. We need you. We need your specific expertise here.
Don't stop.
Just push. Just push. What the hell, guys? I said don't close it completely. Kanthan, grab a seat. How many signatures do you need, and how much money do you need to have to get your party registered for the elections?
So getting the party registered.
Hang on a second. Let me just put you on here. There we go.
So getting a party registered for the elections only takes $500.
Okay,
but to get yourself into the national ballot, that was 250,000 when I registered the ZACP.
250,000.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money. You say it must be more.
You saying it's a lot of money? No, I mean from my perspective. Okay,
you paid for the whole thing.
I paid for the whole thing. Yeah.
Right. All right. So would you say it's worth it then? 250,000, Koketso?
I say we raise it.
To what?
I don't know, maybe a million. It's an easy way to actually cut out some of the chaff at the very least.
What did you get for your 250,000 Rand? And I voted for you, but it didn't get me anything. What did we get, Kanthan?
We got just under 30,000. Yeah. And
votes.
I've got feedback on my.
Ryan, why is he getting feedback? Just take them off. You don't need them. We're not taking calls.
Yeah, well, basically what I can do is just kill that and
Hear yourself.
yeah, and
We don't need. We're not taking live calls. You don't need.
We're not taking any live calls.
All right. So you got what? 30,000 votes.
Yeah, which was just kind of shy of what was needed. But that was a stuff up on my part.
Why?
Well, because I didn't understand the system, and at the time, what I did not realize was that we needed to be on both the national and provincial ballots. And because if you're on the provincial ballots as well, and people end up voting for you on the provincial ballots, there's an allocation that then goes to the national parliament.
Oh, so you could have gone for this seat.
Yeah, and if we had done that, we would have gotten a few seats.
Well, you and a couple other people would be MPs.
Well, yeah, but looking at stepping down now, so.
All right.
But the country would have been a different place. But it was in any case. Look, I don't think the money thing really becomes the issue in terms of getting into parliament. But there was this absurd decision, Koketso, you probably agree with this, that individuals are allowed to run for the National Assembly. And the way in which that system actually works right now favors the big parties.
The big parties.
Yeah, it's a complete stepper.
All right. So you have a problem with how big the ballot paper will get. What else do you want to comment on to start the ball rolling this morning? We got a lot of things on the agenda. So throw them in now, or forever hold your peace, Koketso.
I might end up holding my peace. But look, I think there is quite a lot that has to be said about this. But maybe if we roll it back a bit, one of the reasons we end up with so many parties to begin with is because people don't feel that they are sufficiently represented in government, local government, national government, and of course on the ballot. People have then deemed a solution to be, why don't we get ourselves on the ballot and maybe we can push forward the interests. I'll make an example. The Gazankulu Liberation Congress, I believe it's called. Most people don't know about it, but it's a registered political party. I believe they will be on the ballot, and they are specifically a group of people from the Giyani Vemba district of around 50 odd villages. Why do we have a small party like the Gazankulu Liberation Congress? It's because people in that village, firstly, were promised by the government that there will be this, the Giyani Water Project, I believe it's called. Villages don't have water. Government promises them that we'll give you water. The water never arrives. The initial project is set to cost 100 million. It's now years later. Cost has been 3.5 billion north of that. Still not complete. Therefore, people still don't have water. And then these are the same people who are also the primary victims of the VBS scandal as well. So you've got people who are feeling very shortchanged about what's actually happening politically. And they've decided that, look, maybe the best thing is for us to maybe put our voice directly inside of parliament through something like a vote. And they're not the only ones. This is how
you want to take that away from them.
I wouldn't want to take it away from them. I'm just saying, let's raise the bar so that so for example, I live in east of Johannesburg. Imagine I was to create a party because I don't like how Ekurhuleni is run.
Right. The Ekurhuleni Freedom Front. Whatever.
Why not? You know, I don't know if there's a rule against stealing an acronym, but that's just an example, of course. If everyone was to take that same logic and actually register a political party, the whole system becomes infeasible. And then you end up having to fold the paper 7 times just so someone can actually vote for you. So it's not feasible. And it's a reflection of how the current system has actually failed. No one is addressing this. Props to my money who actually did the fight for saying we want independent candidates. Yeah. So I do agree in principle on that. But within the current system, that hasn't been addressed either, because end of the day, I still have to vote for a party, even though I want a very specific candidate in there. So that's one of the problems.
No, you don't actually need to vote for a party. You do get to vote for an individual. So for example, Zaki Ahmed is registered as an individual. And he's probably got a strong enough following that he'll end up getting into parliament. Problem, of course, comes is that Zaki Ahmed needs, about 36,000 votes to get into parliament. All of the additional votes that he gets will then get distributed proportionately among the parties in the order in which people cast votes for them. And it favors the bigger parties. So the ANC and the DA and the EFF end up being beneficiaries. But guys, the elephant in the room here that we're not confronting, okay, is the problem is not the voting system. The problem is democracy. Democracy is basically a failed experiment. Let's just take that.
Oh my God, that's big. Now you're talking. This is fighting talk. Okay.
Well, you started with Javier Milei this morning.
Fair enough.
And the idea is to have a system that is based on individual rights rather than the tyranny of the majority, surely.
Listen, we had this discussion with Mark Oppenheimer on Tuesday this week in Democracy 101. I would encourage anyone who wants to go down this rabbit hole that Kanthan is opening up to listen to that, and we can pick up the pieces after it's shattered your illusions about democracy. Because I do think that there are a lot of people whose idea of what the perfect system is may be shifting.
Very much so, because the issue that we've got around the world right now is we are seeing that demographics is destiny. And what that means is that if the demographics of people who have essentially a mental model that completely conflicts with your belief in what your fundamental rights are, you host. How do you get out of that trap?
All right, let's look at a couple of specifics. I mean, we can get into political philosophy, but I don't think now is the time.
Well, before you get into the philosophy of it, I think
I don't want
what
to.
Koketso hasn't.
Well, I'll give you specific. The reason
but,
why Israel cannot be a democracy is because the Palestinians outbreed the Israelis at about a 2-to-1 ratio.
That is true.
So Israel cannot be a democracy.
I do want to hear Koketso's view on what should be the answer. So if you deem that some people feel that they're not represented enough and therefore they want to do something about it, and you're saying we should separate those people out as chaff, what then is your solution for people who are not feeling represented? How do they get to be part of the system?
Well,
or we just ignore them?
We should never ignore the citizens, of course. We extract taxes, or the state extracts taxes from people. So at the very least, as a taxpayer, I need to get something in return, and the least I could get is my voice represented. But the short answer, in my belief, would be, let's federalize the state. If we were to vote for let me say, governor in each of the provinces, then there's no need for me to go the extra mile and register my party politically so that I can aim to get one seat in parliament or a couple of seats and try to effect change from the top down. Let's federalize the state so we can actually compartmentalize the governance, and maybe I can focus just where I live, which is essentially what exactly people are trying to do.
But you have that in your municipality, in your district?
Not necessarily. There's a difference between voting for a ward councillor and then voting for what would in effect be a governor. In the South African context, that would be a provincial premier, for example. The premier's office still has very limited power. I make the example where if you take the Western Cape, for all the governance and how much better it is in the Western Cape, for example, very quickly you'll have people then saying in response to that what about the gangs and the poor communities and the townships, etc. What people don't understand is that the Western Cape government is not in control of the South African police service.
So on this note, I just want to bring this up. The ANC were in a complete state yesterday. They tweeted this out about the Western Cape Powers Bill. I don't know if you guys have done your homework on this one, but the ANC is very, very concerned. Of course they are, because they don't get any support anymore in the Western Cape. So they've now grasped at this straw. The Western Cape Powers Bill, a backward step for South Africa. The African National Congress urges all South Africans to call out the unconstitutional actions of the Western Cape government. It's alarming to see that the Western Cape has embraced the ideologies of right-wing factions and has positioned itself as a supporter of the old apartheid regime. They really are using the most triggering language they can, which has never advocated for a unified state or constitutional state outlined in the Freedom Charter. Why are they doing this? Because the Western Cape Powers Bill is effectively something which will give the Western Cape government power to have more authority over local policing, local safety and security. I know that the Western Cape is the only province that has built 10 new schools in the last couple of years, which is an improvement on any of the other provinces that
as
the
opposed
ANC
to 900 schools shut down in KZN.
There we go. So we wonder why KZN is such a disaster at the moment. That could have maybe something to do with it. So what do you think of that? Is this just the ANC using a last-ditch attempt to discredit what effectively will make the provinces
Gareth,
a little more powerful?
Koketso's point here, though, the hyper-localization is really what's needed. Because if you take a look at the greater Johannesburg area, for example, up until the time of us having municipal elections in the form that we have now, the municipalities themselves were highly localized. So we used to have a mayor of Sandton, we would have a mayor of Randburg, and what would happen is that ratepayers within those areas then had very fine control over how resources ended up getting allocated. And so there was a far more reasonable distribution of the payoff between your rates and the way in which services actually get rendered. The problem that we have right now is when you have Sandton and Alex effectively in the same municipal district, and the overwhelming majority of the voters happen to be in Alex. So, this is really the wolves getting together with the sheep and saying, what are we going to have for dinner? That's the scenario that you end up with.
All right. So, Pums, do you have any comments on that? The Western Cape Powers Bill or anything to do with it?
I think that Kanthan said we're not talking about the elephant in the room. And I think the elephant in the room is much bigger than, is it democracy that doesn't work in South Africa? Is it a hyper-localization that we need? But what we actually see is we are seeing a lack of inspiring leadership. So people don't feel represented because nobody is
inspiring. Come on, get out of here.
Not talking to them. We're not. So the buy-in that says I actually have a government that cares for me and wants to see things work is not there, and hence everybody is feeling like we need to do something.
Okay, so we're all bringing our elephants to the room. Koketso's is the ballot paper.
The room is going to be very full.
Pumi's is inspiring leadership, which is missing. Kanthan's is democracy itself. I want to say we live in South Africa. We've got a massive elephant in the room. That elephant is the welfare state. The ANC was boasting the other day about 28 million people who rely directly on the government for their survival. The number of income taxpayers in this country is vanishingly small and getting smaller. We cannot sustain the path we're currently on. And Cyril Ramaphosa is at the 112th birthday celebration actually boasting about how much they have to help the people of this country. And he's also threatened that he won't, but if the other parties get in, they'll take that away. What do you have to say?
True.
Well, what do you have to say about it? I mean, let's start with you, Koketso.
Yeah, I think I actually tweeted this sometime last week that it is very indicative of what the president thinks of the voters' role, really. Very undermining, and it's very disappointing to see that coming from the president at the very least. The ruling party is using the welfare state almost as a threat to the voters to say that keep us in power or else. But like you mentioned, just speaking on the welfare state, there's quite a bit of talk around, we'll start off with I forget its actual name, the Social Relief of Distress Grant. I think that's its official name, the 350 Rand a month. Right. What we then had late last year in the midterm budget speech from the finance minister was that this is going to continue into 2025. 350 Rand a month for what, maybe 20 odd million people, give or take. That's a lot of money,
Yep.
And why is this mentioned in a midterm budget speech instead of in a State of the Nation or by the finance minister in the budget speech, which happens at the beginning of the year, right after the SONA? It's quite a big commitment. The reason it's brought up at the midterm budget speech is because it's part of the election campaign to say that if you keep the ANC in power, we will continue to give you the 350. The minister,
It's 7 billion Rand a month, by the way.
which is quite a lot. I think last time I saw the numbers, in terms of GDP percentage, that would be something like 3.5–4% of South Africa's GDP.
Doesn't sound like a lot.
Well, it's a lot when you consider that we don't grow the GDP by 4% year on year, but we are now saying let's spend 4% of GDP paying 350 Rand a month to a wide array of people.
And therefore unsustainable.
Therefore unsustainable, but it's quite a large budget.
But you would have to be able to do maths like you just did which no one else in the ANC can do.
Well, let's take a different view on this. guys.
That's a
You would have to do.
very much generalized statement, but anyway.
Whose maths would you trust in the ANC? Which one of them is your mathematician of choice? Anybody?
Jacob Zuma.
Yes, we know how good he is with numbers.
No, but guys, let's just follow up on this point, okay? So we're giving 350 Rand a month. Let's just take the view that
by the way, we're not including the child grants and all the other.
No, we're not
disability
including all of those.
grants.
But
Sure.
that's, again, that ties into my point. Now, what if we take the view that instead of cutting back on those grants, what we really need to do is to take the model of almost everything that gets provided by the central government currently. So we're talking in terms of health, we're talking in terms of education, all of the money that gets allocated on a per pupil basis, we just simply allocate directly to the people on the ground in the form of vouchers.
They can spend it
So
themselves.
that they can spend it themselves as they see fit.
with their children.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
for education, you can't use it for something else.
Yeah, so, consider, for example, that the 350 Rand a month grant, if you look at it in broad economic terms, it's basically quantitative easing, right? Can we just, agree that that's the case? So it's a constant injection of money into the economy, and ultimately the, people that end up benefiting from that is the rest of the economy. So,
So you don't have a problem with it then in basic?
no,
in principle?
look, I'm saying that Bidenomics, which is what it is fundamentally flawed. But at the same time, you have to actually accept the stimulus effect that goes with it. And our choices right now going into the next election is that we either tell people we're going to take it away from you, which no one's going to vote for.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, you tell them what we want to do is right now, you getting a really bad education system from the government. Instead of government providing you with a school, we are going to give you 20,000 Rand per year per pupil, which is what you end up with, and you spend the money on educating your kids. And I believe that any party that adopts that as a platform, it's going to be popular with the voters.
Kanthan, all people will hear is 20,000 and they'll go, yeah, that.
Yeah,
right?
but
so that's the way to do it.
But here's the point, okay?
It's good.
We've seen, and actually the Western Cape is a great example of this in Khayelitsha, where you have people who have been setting up private schools in Khayelitsha, where the kids go for 1,000 Rand a month.
Mhm.
And parents have been paying that out of their own pockets
Right.
because they know that everything that is run by the National Education Department is going to end up with a 30% pass rate. Whereas you have these teachers who can't work in a SAT2
Hey,
toxic environment.
Don't bemoan the 30% pass rate. We found out this morning that the Free State's grade 10s, only 40% of them passed last year.
Yeah, but 40% of them passed with 30%
That's better
of
than
the
30.
knowledge.
No, but come on. I'm trying to give them some kudos here. Come on. Don't knock it until you try
Are we
it.
counting Orania in that?
No, we're not counting Orania. I don't. Is
What
that
is-
in
what
the
is
free,
the-
is that in the Free
It's
States or in the Northern Cape?
It's in the Northern Cape. Okay. What is the pass rate in Orania?
I don't know, but
I'm
I'm
sure someone will tell
I'm
us in
sure
the
it'll
comments.
embarrass the rest of us if we see it, just because it's a small and very much an outlier statistically.
By the way, can you name a single white player in Bafana Bafana?
I don't think I can.
All right.
I
If
can't
you want-
name a
I
single
don't know.
player in
I
Bafana
can't
Okay,
name
Bafana.
a
so if you want to know why Bafana Bafana is not winning, the last time Bafana won, we had a white captain.
Ooh, don't make this racial. People will. The DEI crowd will hate you for it.
They're going to hate me for it, but the fact of the matter
Do you know
is,
DEI only works one way?
the fact of the matter is that if you look in terms of the reason why rugby thrives, is that the team actually is broadly representative of the country, and you have everyone who has the capacity to go to a stadium, they buy into the idea of national cohesion around the rugby team. There's no such incentive in terms of Bafana Bafana.
You're laughing because you disagree, Pums?
Pooms doesn't watch soccer. She shouldn't really be talking about it.
Neither do I.
I used to watch soccer.
Yeah,
I
when
think
there
that
was a
the
white
problems-
captain and they
you
won.
know the problems. One of the things that we're doing right now in this conversation is almost taking everything in a very simplistic way. I think, which is also one of the problems I think we have in our government, is these things don't work in silos, right? There's Bafana Bafana has a pipeline problem, a coaching problem, an administrative problem, a player representation problem, and all of these things are not. It's not just the one. It's a million small things all coalescing into a big clusterfuck. And it's not just in Bafana Bafana. You see it across the board in a lot of different places. And that's where we are. Where we're looking, even talking about, should we be giving parents vouchers for their kids? Should we be? All of these things are not one thing that is going to unravel the entire thing. We cannot be looking at these things on a very simple, single plane view. You have to look at the whole picture and aspects of this picture, because I can tell you now, even as Cyril Ramaphosa stands up there and says to the people, they're going to take away your 350 Rand social grant if you don't vote for us. That may upset people, but what those people also know is that a 350 Rand a month grant is not going to buy them a car. It's not going to change their life. And they would much rather have a government that had solutions that would change their lives than 350 Rand. But in an environment where nobody is saying, how do we change your life? And the only person is saying, I'm going to give you 350 Rand and the other guy is going to take it away. The one thing that right now is giving you any kind of relief from your social distress being this one thing, and nobody else telling you how it's going to work. You would rather have that than nothing. But they know, they know that 350 Rand is not going to change their life. It's not going to buy them a car. It's not going to get them a bigger house. It's not going to allow them to change the circumstance of their children.
We had of those things. One of the comments when this came up on Tuesday morning's show was from somebody who said he has a relative who actually is happy to sit at home and take the 350 Rand. He doesn't want to work. Now, obviously, that's an individual, isolated case. But what do we say to people like that? That actually, they'd rather have the 350 and sit at home. I don't know, drink, whatever they're doing. Because there are a lot of people who clearly are doing that. There's some people who've given up on looking for work at all. Maybe because they couldn't find any 100 times over, and that would demoralize anybody, right?
So guys, let me tell you the flip side around that. Okay, the 350 Rand grant, which the ANC says is indispensable and people can't live without it. But at the same time, we're insisting that you have to pay people a minimum wage of what is it currently up to?
Oh, yeah. So this is a good point.
It's absurd.
So Gareth in the comments says, this is not me, by the way, it's another Gareth. He says, remove minimum wage in regions with the most unemployment with a certain daily or monthly time parameter.
You just completely remove minimum wage, full stop. Because what we have right now is this absurd situation where we have a market that's desperately crying out for inexpensive labor, but government is setting the price of entry for people into that. But at the same time, they're saying, no, actually paying you less than 3,800 a month or whatever it is actually exploitation. But at the same time, we're saying you can't survive without 350 Rand a month. This means that if a person wants to work for 800 Rand a month and there's a person who's willing to hire them for 800 Rand a month, they're not allowed to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another layer to this as well. The talk of basic income grants. So you've got activist groups that are also calling for, I think, a basic income grant of 1,500 Rand minimum. That basically means if you're of working age, that is effectively your welfare that you receive, regardless of whether you are working, whether you're domestic, whether you're sitting at home, etc., etc. That's 1,500 a month. But like Kanthan just mentioned, that's below the minimum wage set by the very same government. So the question there is, if we entertain this, it starts at 350 Rand a month, but if we're not careful, we're going to get into that 1,500 Rand a month mark. And the finance minister has then promised to say we will look for funding to permanently keep the 350 Rand a month a thing. That's 30 odd billion Rand per year just to keep that going at 350. What about at the basic income grant of 1,500?
What's the bit that basic income grant doesn't include people who are currently starting businesses, employing people, making money off a caravan on the side of the road where they're selling sandwiches? It doesn't include those people because they're earning already. So you want everyone who's not contributing the economy to get a piece of it, which means that the people who are already making the contribution to the economy are getting punished for it because the money's coming from somewhere and it's not coming from the unemployed.
Look, we're still in Africa at the end of the day. So
what does that mean?
Being in Africa means two things. One of those is that, firstly, we have quite a large informal sector. You know, all this talk about the gig economy, which you hear a lot by the Americans, for example. I'm technically considered a millennial, and we apparently, that is my generation, we pioneered this. You know, everyone has a 9 to 5, and then everyone also has a side hustle that gives in another stream of income, typically freelance work. That's a gig economy, and we talk about this a lot in developed settings. In the African context, however, we have quite a large informal economy. The government can't keep track of that. They don't have the tools or the capacity to keep track of that. So even if I receive a basic income grant and I decide to run a caravan on the side of the road, who's going to know? You know.
Can we just go back to politics for a little bit? Because I don't want us to dwell on one thing for too long. There's so many things to talk about, and it's only the second week of January. Already, there's plenty. So can we just talk about the Zuma factor quickly in this MK party? Because it does seem that many people are just writing it off like it's not a thing. Last week, Phumi had some very strong thoughts on this, and I haven't heard from Kanthan or from you, Koketso, on this yet. But do you think that this is something which we should pay more attention to? Now, Ace Magashule has joined him. That's news since last time we spoke about it.
Merging. It's a coalition.
Well,
Ace Magashule has his own shop.
Yes, what's it called again?
Coalition.
The ATM or something.
African Transformation Movement.
It's ACT, actually. ACT.
Yeah. So whatever. It's basically a way for him to just remain relevant and to be able to get a job where he doesn't have to do anything. That's what politics is. So what do you have to say about this, Koketso?
So this is now going into the advent of the kingmaker. We saw this phenomenon with Julius Malema, I think back in 2019, and in some of the local government elections as well. So if you look at the polling numbers and the research numbers locally, internationally, you've got a lot of people saying the ANC is not going to make the 50% cut when it comes to the upcoming election. Meaning that there would be a coalition government of some sort, and the coalition, that is the collective of parties that decide to basically all share the same bed, they would need to numbers-wise make 51% or higher. Now, how do you get there? This is one of the reasons why you have notable figures starting political parties left, right, center. Julius Malema obviously is the obvious choice. I mean, the EFF do double-digit numbers in the election, but if you can start a party exactly like what I don't think Jacob Zuma started the Mkhonto weSizwe party. He's just the figurehead or father figure, really. But Ace Magashule, Hlaudi Motsoeneng is another one as well. If they can get 1% here, 2% there, they position themselves as key elements of a coalition going forward, meaning their voice will matter, meaning they can have some level of, let me say, sway in terms of that discussion. That's a nice way to not only get a job for yourself as a member of parliament,
but
sheltered employment. But look at Patricia de Lille, for example.
Yeah.
She gets booted out of the DA for what I think is valid reasons. She knows that she can rally the colored vote around her.
Yeah.
The end goal was to get one seat in parliament, get that member of parliament salary, which is over R1 million a year.
And then she becomes a minister.
And then on top of that, to really show support to the ruling party.
So everyone who voted for her basically just said, we want this woman to have a job.
Well, they basically ended up voting for the ANC because she votes with them.
Right.
Precisely. She will vote with them at every opportunity. She gets a member of parliament job. She's also a minister. Yeah. Everything works out for her. So you've got an Ace Magashule looking at this.
And he says, why not me?
Yeah, why not me? So them starting all these parties is their way of saying that, right, I may be politically booted out of Luthuli House, but I still have some numbers and I can rally support in Free State. Yeah. And Hlaudi will say I can rally support amongst artists, etc. And then also be a Patricia de Lille, and maybe at best I can potentially
you don't agree?
Minister.
It's just the amongst artists that's got. But you know what else?
He did promise them royalties while he was in charge.
You know what else Bafana Bafana have in common with our voting and parliamentary system? The calculations that go with it. You know, the one thing we're very good at when we watch Bafana Bafana is calculating how many points we're going to need and who has to lose and this. And this, Kanthan was talking about the number of votes that they got for ZACP, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing about, and I do also, I think next week, I'm going to bring my little table of absolute numbers in terms of voters, because actually the number of people who vote for you are very important, as well as the number of people who completely show up to vote. Why I am very much in favor of the more the merrier, because you want more people showing up to vote. We always talk about this on the show. We talk about the number of people who showed up to vote for the ANC in 2019 versus the number of people who are eligible to vote and the number of people who are actually on the voters' roll. All of those things come into play, where we have almost 40 million South Africans who should be voting and only 18 million showing up to vote and 11 million voting for the ANC.
Right.
It's all a numbers game, and it's in understanding the absolute number of people you can bring to the ballot box. That is what is going to make you a kingmaker. There's by-elections happening. I think the first set of by-elections will be happening in 3 weeks' time.
And by the way, there's a voter registration weekend next weekend. So
on the 3rd and the 4th of
so
February.
if you care about democracy, you're not like Kanthan who's given up on it, then tell people to register to vote. Next weekend you can register. It's very easy to do.
By the way, you don't have to wait for a voter registration weekend. You can vote. You can register to vote online on the IEC website. But the point being, though, that the number of people you can bring to the ballot box is what is going to give you the opportunity to be represented and then be able to vote with the
There
ANC
were
if you
11
want.
million people, registered voters, who didn't vote in the last election.
I know this.
So, getting people registered is not the issue. Let's talk in terms of Jacob Zuma.
People to show up
Yeah,
to vote.
let me hear your thoughts of Jacob Zuma.
I want to go back to standing in the queue to vote in 1994. This was in Durban, and of course there were two ballot papers, the provincial ballot and there was this old gogo who was fighting with the IEC, the electoral officials at the time. There wasn't an IEC at that point. And she was waving the ballot paper around and she was saying, "Where is Jacob Zuma on this ballot paper? I'm here to vote for Zuma."
In 1994.
1994. Okay. There was this gogo that was out there. I'm standing in line, clutching my daughter, who's not yet a year old, standing in the queue, and there she is. Jacob Zuma, his pulling power in KZN. Okay, consider at the point at which he became effective leader of the ANC. The ANC massively increased its vote in KZN. Okay, by millions at a time. Is he going to carry that vote with him? I believe he will. So we've already.
You want to put a number on it?
No, but what I'm saying is that it is going to be in the millions overall. If you look throughout the country, Jacob Zuma's name power alone is going to be enough to bring that. And I think that's a good thing, because one of the things we've argued on this show is that the best possible thing for South Africa is for the ANC to split and drop below 50%.
Even if he took 5% of the ANC's votes away, that would be significant.
Yes, because the ANC needs to get below 50%.
So maybe we should look at who else is in this Mkhonto Sizwe party so we can see who the MPs will be if they get like 20 seats. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I do want to move to international stuff, which I know Kanthan is itching to talk about. I know, Koketso, you've got some ideas here too. You've been getting a lot of heat on social media about your point of view on some things, including the ICJ and Israel. And Phumi always has something to say about this too. But I do want to welcome our guest for the last 15 minutes of the show, Arthur Lenk, who was Israel's ambassador to South Africa from 2013 to 2017. Before that, he was Israel's ambassador to Azerbaijan and the director of the Department of International Law at their Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He is in Israel right now, and he joins us live this morning. Good morning, Arthur. How are you?
Hey, Gareth. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you too. So, Arthur, I'm very pleased to have you on. We haven't spoken to anyone in Israel during all of this since October the 7th. And I think probably a lot of South Africans are still asking questions about the ICJ, but now apparently we're also going to be suing the US and the UK for their aiding Israel in what they're calling a genocide. Let's have your comments right at the top on what's going on here. And I see you wearing a Bring Them Home shirt, which is about the hostages. which should still be released. That should be a priority for everyone. And maybe if they were released, it would end a lot of this bloodshed. What do you feel about all of that?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for noting that. I guess I put it right in front of your face. It's day 104. Grandmothers, babies. The two photographs I have behind me are people that are connected to me personally. Keith Siegel is a grandfather who's married to a South African who was held hostage with him, and his wife, Aviva, was released after 50 some odd days. Keith is in his 60s, a grandfather, and still in Gaza. Nama Levi is a 19-year-old girl who was a peacemaker. She went to a peace camp in the United States last summer with Israelis and Palestinians and my daughter, and she's being held, and it's unimaginable what it must be like to be a 19-year-old woman under Hamas after we know what they did to Israeli women on October 7th.
Do you want to talk about the current developments? This idea that we're suing South Africa, first of all, involved. We probably wouldn't be paying as much attention. Sadly, I mean, it's a terrible situation that's going on in Gaza at the moment. It was a terrible situation that happened on October the 7th. But now we've put ourselves front and center here. Do you want to comment on South Africa's ICJ case and the current situation with the UK and US and us suing them for being party to helping Israel?
Yeah, I had a wonderful 4 years in South Africa, and I have friends all over your beautiful country. But your government has shown a cynicism that it's replaced this vision, this ideal of Rainbow Nation in the world, to playing games with international affairs, how it behaves on Israel-Palestine, how it behaves on Russia-Ukraine. It's right. It's welcoming Sudan's al-Bashir to South Africa and then sneaking him out in the dead of night and getting reprimanded by the ICC, palling around with Venezuela and Cuba and Zimbabwe. That's not a rainbow nation. That's a rogue nation. And South Africans believe better, and South Africa should be doing better. And it's an insult to the word genocide, the way that South Africa has acted in this case.
Sure. Look, Arthur, let's park that stuff, because I think that you'll find around this table that there are people who agree with you and there are people who have another take on it. I'm really more interested in what is the sense that you're getting on the ground in Israel right now in terms of where this is going to be going. Netanyahu said a couple of days ago that he foresees that the ongoing conflict is going to continue at least through 2025. And meanwhile, we have a situation where Iran, which, for a long time has, clearly been the single biggest point of antagonism for Israel, now fired a missile to, well, actually, there were two missiles that were fired. They firstly took out a base out in Idlib in Syria, and they've also hit Balochistan out in Pakistan. Which shows
these are Israeli missiles.
Yes. No.
Did you say Iranian?
No, they're Iranian missiles.
Iranian missiles, yes. And my
what
point
they said is that one of their targets was actually a Mossad.
Well, whatever the point might be in terms of who they've taken out, what they've shown is that they have the capacity to fire missiles from Iran,
long range,
that can reach Israel and actually take out targets in Israel. And this, to my mind, fundamentally changes the dynamics of the way in which the Middle East has been managed for, the past 50 years. Arthur, surely there has to be, at this stage, a rethink in terms of how to manage the fact that we've had these fundamental technological changes in warfare that now make it possible for a lot of Israel's enemies to be far more effective in terms of actually conducting a war against Israel. And in fact, if Iran suddenly decided to open up the taps in terms of missiles, given the size of Israel, how small it is, they'd be able to flatten Israel in a short period of time. So I'm sure that these are things that are being discussed within Israel right now. And I'm trying to get a sense of what on the ground people are seeing as the way forward. How
tell us,
how do we end up getting out of this, Arthur?
Well, here's a plan, and then let's call it the Cliff Central Plan for Peace. I'm giving it to you, Gareth. Here's how the war ends today. Free the hostages, Hamas give up control of Gaza, the
But
war's
they're not
over.
going to do that. They're not going to do that.
No, well, perhaps not. But you asked me of what's a way out. That's a way out today. Israel, there was a massive ceasefire in the whole region.
Well,
on
since
October 6th.
since 2007. But look, my point is that you know that Hamas is not going to do that. So talking about it, it's like Zelensky saying that the way in which the war in Ukraine ends is Russia surrenders. That's not going to happen. So when we you remove the impossible situations, that's the environment in which you need to say, okay, based on the fact that that's not going to happen, how do we then rally all of the forces that can play a role in bringing an end to this conflict in a way that actually guarantees that Israel is able to continue to actually exist?
All right, let's hear what he has to say.
Okay, well, if my peace plan is unacceptable, sounded like a good plan.
No, it's acceptable. I believe in your peace plan, but it's not going to work. They're not going to do it.
Okay,
All right, so
but
carry on.
but then saying that Israel should just stop fighting is nonsense.
No, I'm not
too,
saying
right?
that either.
No, he's not saying that.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying give us what is the realistic way forward other than a war that
goes on and on.
That goes on and on, but more importantly, where you have an increasing number of enemies that are now more heavily armed and actually have the capacity. I mean, how do we prevent a nuclear conflagration as being the
what
the
are
end
people
game?
what are people that saying about the end game here?
The end game has to be here. We're saying it like this: 150,000 Israelis are IDPs in Israel right now, right? Along our southern and northern borders, we've cleared out those communities. The only way for them to go back home is for them to feel safe. And the only way for them to feel safe is a reality where Palestinians or in the south and Lebanese in the north are our neighbors and not our enemies, are people that are not looking to destroy us. We have to be able to live in coexistence with our Palestinian and Lebanese neighbors as we do with our Egyptian and Jordanian neighbors. We have to create a reality like that. And when there's a risk, when there's a threat, when Hamas leaders say, when we get another shot, we're going to do it again. When Iran is delusioned to think that they have an ability to affect Israel and that Israel doesn't have a right to act like any other country in self-defense. Look, we want to live in peace with our neighbors. We've made peace with two of them. We've tried to make peace with the Palestinians. It didn't work. And we have to find a way back to it. Hamas is blocking Palestinians in Gaza and Lebanese in Lebanon by Hezbollah, connected to Iran, right? Also Hamas, of course, connected to Iran. The way back for all the people in the region is obviously you have to stand up to this lawlessness and protect your people.
Well, isn't it true that part of this has to be that Hamas have to be extirpated? They've shown themselves to be a violent terrorist organization that's lived up to every possible definition of that term, and they've given themselves no exit off this highway. So they have to be removed. They have to be removed by force, and that's what war is. And in war, there are going to be casualties because that's what happens during war. This war has less casualties, believe it or not, than any other one that preceded it. So we've just got to take this in the direction that it's going to go. And that means, inevitably, many more months of conflict, whether people like that or not.
Well, I don't believe it's inevitable. I think that there are options. Again, somebody, or our colleague Karen, just said that that's non-viable. I don't think it's non-viable. I think that countries like Qatar, countries like Saudi Arabia, countries like Egypt have impact, have the ability to
all right,
show the Palestinians a better path for their future, a better future for Palestinians.
I wanted to get you on because we've got specific questions that you can answer being in Israel. So, Koketso, what do you want to throw in here?
Yeah, I'll just throw in this. One day, maybe we'll all be ready to have the conversation about Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, You can throw Boko Haram in there as well. We need to have an honest conversation here. So personally, I don't like Hamas. From where I stand, Hamas, they had a great opportunity to really turn Palestine into a thriving nation. They're neighbors with Jordan, they're neighbors with Israel. This was an opportunity for them to really do something for their people. Instead, Hamas has devoted any and all resources to throwing rockets at Israel. That's how I interpret it. So right now, since you're in Israel, Arthur, I'd maybe ask you the question to say, perhaps the approach should be different. Has Israel maybe considered lending a helpful hand to Hamas to maybe build out a democracy or a thriving renaissance of the Palestinian people? Or is that also not impossible because it is completely against Hamas ideals? I'm in the other side of the world here. So from where I stand, I always consider the Palestinian people. But the Palestinian people, again, from where I stand, they're getting the short end of the stick here. They are surrounded by neighbors who are somewhat thriving, while at the same time, they see none of that prosperity because of the government they elected. And to this day, since Hamas came into power, you've never heard of Palestinian elections, I believe. So
No.
you could also make an argument that Hamas is not only a terrorist organization, but they're actually running a autocratic dictatorship of some sort. So can Israel maybe offer a helping hand?
I love the way Israel's always expected to be the adult in the room. There's all these expectations on Israel. They must. How about this from Israel? We never put any expectations whatsoever on Hamas. Like, how about stop fucking rocketing? Would that be too much to ask? But no, we don't even have a... you go ahead and answer this, Arthur. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Some people have said that the difference between Israel and Hamas is because we've had these stages of wars and ups and downs and war and peace. And while I was in South Africa in 2014, there was a period of battle. The difference, I've heard said, is what happens between the wars. Israel built up a democratic, free, liberal, thriving society, that startup nation, and Hamas built a metro under homes, under hospitals, under schools, and all of the money that anybody's donated to Palestinians in Gaza over the years. Lots of South
And it's
Africans
substantial, substantial money.
It's billions and billions of dollars, and it's not been spent on their economy, on their education, on their healthcare. It's been all in preparation for war with Israel. And the challenge is, how do we find for the Palestinians leaders who have a different worldview, who see Singapore as a model and not Hamas? Again, I'm not arguing only for Israel. I'm here talking to you guys this morning saying, how do we make things better for Palestinians and make them a neighbor for us?
All right, can I go back to the international community here for a second, because we're running out of time, and we can carry on for another couple of minutes if you guys are okay with it. But what about the international community? I mean, we've got this array of states who've lined up in solidarity with Gaza and, frankly, with Hamas. There's no other way to put it. There was always this period after October the 7th where everybody was like, well, we support the Palestinians, but we don't support Hamas. That sort of dissolved. Now those people are happy to say they support Hamas, which means that their intentions were not honest from the beginning and their alliances were not honest from the beginning. Let's admit that. But there are a lot of nations who are behind Gaza and Hamas and are anti-Israel since October the 7th, and maybe a little bit after that, because they needed some time to pretend that they were partisan, or rather non-partisan. Now we also have some nations who've lined up very solidly behind Israel. We've got Germany, who've said they think this ICJ case is a disgrace. We've had the UK and the US. Where is Israel getting its support from? And where is Iran and that nexus of power getting their support from? Arthur, do you have any comments on the international situation?
Well, I think that anybody who's looking for a better future for Palestinians, who really is interested in the kinds of things that we were talking about of how do we change the story? How do we get past this? Can't be in favor of Hamas. You just can't. But the group of countries that want to, I don't know, break up this international idea of rule-based living, of international relations based on interacting peacefully. Well, the fact is Israel is the only country that falls into that category in our neighborhood. And while there's room for criticism for Israel, Israel's far from perfect. I'm pretty vocal with criticisms about Israel all the time on social media. That said, there's no criticism of there's no rational criticism of standing up to Hamas, to rejecting. So earlier it was said that Hamas is like Boko Haram. It is. It's like ISIS. If we want more of those kinds of groupings, let Hamas win. The message that gets sent across Southern Africa and across our world is that's the way to go. But none of us want to live in a world
Can
like
I
that.
have
Go for it,
3
Bobs.
minutes?
Yeah.
I'm very interested in what the mood is like in Israel at the moment, really in terms of their government. Netanyahu, they were before the war, before October 7th, there were lots of demonstrations, lots of anti-Netanyahu sentiment. And also a conflict of this nature is a drag on the population, because they've got brothers, sisters, cousins, lovers, friends who have to go to the front. And also this long of a drag out. I know it's 104 days, you said. How do the people in Israel feel today about this conflict and about where it is going and how long it is probably going to last? How do they feel about that? And how do they feel about the ICJ submissions that we watched?
But
a week
we
ago?
keep arguing that facts are more important than feelings.
No. I've never argued that. But I do want to know what the people feel in Israel today.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I have to say, I was one of those people out in early 2023, waving Israeli flags, standing against the Israeli government, current government, again, and this question about how to stand on our legal system. But here's the amazing thing that happened on October 7th. Everybody stopped. Everybody understood that right now, the fight that we need to fight is for our homes and for
your very existence.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, that doesn't mean that I or a lot of people would like to see Benjamin Netanyahu as our prime minister long term. There's going to have to be a domestic reckoning.
Arthur, the leader of the opposition, the biggest opposition party, and Benjamin Netanyahu's fiercest critic, Benny Gantz, is part of this government. They're part of the government.
That's right. Exactly right. That's exactly right. And he understands, and we all understand, that we have to win this war. That if we don't win this war, that there's no way to continue with Hamas waving its Islamic flag next to us. The Palestinians can't be our neighbors without winning this war. To answer your question about what's the feeling in Israel, there's an incredible determination, incredible focus on bringing our hostages home, getting them home, on getting our IDPs safe and taking care of them and their families. And getting Israel back to where we need to be. And then obviously we're going to have a reckoning domestically about what went wrong and who's responsible. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody's responsible, starting at the top. But we're very, very focused on winning.
IDPs are internally displaced people, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Everybody who lived along the Gaza border.
All right. I'm sorry, Arthur. I just want to go on to something else. And if you don't mind staying with us for a couple of minutes more, I think there's an interesting new development, and that is the Houthis and their blocking and their aggression to commercial shipping, which has made the Red Sea impossible for some. That's interesting news for South Africa. It means they have to come past the Cape of Good Hope. But it's very bad news for international trade. And
add
Biden,
10 days to that journey.
Right. It adds 10 days to the journey and many millions and millions of dollars. For international trade. It's going to be a major problem for many people across the world. It will increase the cost of living for many people across the world. Everybody in the room,
and
Kanthan,
the European
Koketso,
Union have actually said now that they're going to mount what did Paki say? Oh, an armada. So they're actually
Good.
looking at sending into
Good.
that. Now,
These guys, it's a small group of ragtag lunatics in Yemen who are holding the whole world hostage here. And they're using Israel as an excuse for doing this too. It's just piracy of a different kind. But they're also supported by the very people who want to
Iran.
destroy Israel.
Iran.
We can't help thinking that Iran is behind that too, right?
100%. There's no question that the Houthis are sponsored by Iran. It's no coincidence that the Iranian missiles towards Iraq match that up too. It's the question is what team are we on? Are we on the Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi, Iran team? Or do we want international?
No, I don't think. I think part of the problem, Arthur, that we have here is that we keep talking about teams, and I think Donald Trump absolutely nailed it. When people asked him, what team are you on, and he said, "I just want people to stop dying." And I think that that's actually a good starting point to look at. How do we get to that point where everyone is able to have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? And as soon as we have the team mentality, particularly given the way in which the US is a waning power, the Western world is a waning power, you're seeing the ascendancy of all of the BRICS countries, and there are these blocks being set up, and all of them, by and large, are not friendly towards Israel. And Israel has to end up living in a world where they have to live with those people. Israel cannot actually be an island. And I'm saying, how do you then persuade people who are on the other side and who are not directly involved in the conflict? So I'm talking in terms of the Russians, I'm talking in terms of the Chinese, and how do you get them on board to actually have some sort of role that ensures that Hamas is able to be controlled, or ideally Hamas should be eliminated, but one is not necessarily going to be able to get to that point unless there's widespread killing of civilians in Gaza, because you can't find who Hamas is because of the fact that they are a guerrilla war unit and they look like everyone else. And your ability to actually then take them out without having a large range of collateral damage of the populace is not going to happen. So how do we get to the point where we're having a change in conversation that we can actually say, let's craft out a way forward out here that is going to ensure that Israel doesn't get attacked going forward? Israel can't do this alone.
But I hear what you're saying. Firstly, I don't agree that the BRICS countries are ascending. I think that they're looking to be chaos agents and to cause the Russian word balagan, to cause instability all over. That's not a plan. That's not a way that international society, that people around the world want to live. I think that people who care about the Palestinians, people who care about Lebanese people, people who care about Yemenis, people who care about Iranians need to stand up against all of this. Those people, don't forget, put the Israelis aside. All of those people deserve better lives and less chaos and less violence in their lives. If you care about Palestinians, you have to be against Hamas. You have to be.
Well, I always look at the situation and go, okay, if they got what they wanted, let's say that they eliminated the state of Israel, would that stop all of their problems? Would all their problems go away if Israel was just destroyed? And the obvious answer is no. So if you granted them a wish in a parallel universe and their wish was, let's eliminate the state of Israel, how would the average Palestinian's life improve after that? It wouldn't. On any scale, it just wouldn't. And there'd be new conflicts. I mean, we know that more Muslims have been killed in Kurdistan and in Pakistan and in Iraq and in Yemen than have been killed in this war against Palestine, which Israel's waging now. And nobody was protesting in the streets of London and New York for any of that. Let's just be very clear about it. People have absolute hypocrisy when they come up with this idea that Israel's suddenly the worst and the most destructive force in the Middle East. If anything, the opposite is true. Do you have any comments on the fact that that these Iranians are funding local politicians, Kanthan?
The interesting question for me on whether the Iranians are funding local politicians is, how does Iran get money into South Africa?
Cash.
Yes, but what sort of cash?
I don't know, but it's very, very possible. We know that this country is the most permeable country in the world when it comes to secure
and how
borders.
much money are we actually talking about?
Maybe enough to pay the rent at Lutuli House for an extra.
I think that
US dollars
Koketso's
via
laughing.
Qatar in private planes.
Yeah, but let's
in the stuffed in sofas.
But let's consider the antagonism between Iran and Qatar to start off with. And one of the problems that we've got,
antagonism there?
There is. One of the problems that we've got is that there's no nuance whatsoever in terms of the way in which we break down all of the surrounding countries around Israel. So to the point, okay, I disagree with Arthur on one point. Iran does not support Hamas. Iran supports Hezbollah. Iran supports the Houthis. Iran puts a lot of money and resources into providing weaponry that's going across to them. We've seen comprehensive studies that have shown that a lot of the weaponry that has ended up in Hamas's hands was stuff that was sold to Ukraine, and then the Ukrainians then sold it on the black market, and it ended up in Hamas's hands. So this stuff out here is the Saudis hate Hamas. They want nothing to do with them. The reason why Israel has built this absolutely magnificent border wall is that they don't want either Islam or either Hamas or the Islamic Brotherhood getting people into their country and fomenting insurrection.
You mean Egypt?
Yeah, sorry, into Egypt. Sorry, the Jordanians as well.
Yeah, they don't want Palestinians.
They don't want Palestinians out there. But what they are united in is that they all have this fundamental hatred for Israel. For whatever reason. Now
we know the reason.
But now going back to the time of Trump and the brokering of the Abraham Accords, and we were well on the path to Saudi Arabia finally recognizing Israel and establishing diplomatic relations.
And the UAE.
Yes, and right now I'm very convinced that one of the reasons why October 7th happened is to derail that entire process, because there was an inexorable push towards peace in the Middle East. So how do we get to the point where we're able to get that back on track? And who are the people right now who can be brokers? And I'm saying, Arthur, whatever you may say in terms of the motives of Russia, India, and China, the fact is that they currently have the ability to be brokers. And they've already shown this in terms of the fact that they've set up this rapprochement between the Saudis and the Iranians. Now, for the Saudis to continue talking to the Iranians, the Saudis very clearly are telling the Iranians, you've got to stop funding the Houthis. Remember that the Saudis and the Iranians met on the sidelines of the WEF over the past couple of days. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of stuff that's happening behind the scenes. And to my mind, there has to be discussions that are pushing people in that direction.
Well, I mean, Arthur, the Anthony Blinken is hardly an honest broker in this situation. And we know that the Biden administration is half asleep most of the time. But do you think that maybe Kanthan has a point about Russia, India, and China becoming the middlemen, the moderators in a conversation about what could happen here?
Look, firstly, I liked earlier, he didn't like the idea of teams, but suddenly there's a team he's lobbying for. He's suggesting that should be more active. But that's not the grouping that has relations with Israel, with Europe, with the United States. In Israel, we very much appreciate the American government and its support for Israel, its desire to help the Palestinians reach a better day. I don't think that the Russians, who are continuing to bombard Ukraine and hold their own opposition in prisons, are the people to see common cause with. The Chinese have this huge economic crisis at home. If we care about Palestinians, if South Africa is interested in helping Palestinians and not just badger Israel and NATO and America and the West and team with the Venezuelans and Irans of the world, then it's easy to see that what the South African government is doing is problematic. Excuse me?
All right. No. Which side to be on? So Koketso and Phumi and Kanthan, last comments. Koketso, you go first. And then Arthur will let you wrap it up.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with Netanyahu here that this is unlikely to end anytime soon. And I remember, this is now years ago, someone on YouTube saying that there is a general consensus in Israel that Netanyahu is not the cleanest guy out there, but Israelis at the very least appreciate him for one thing, and that is that he will do his utmost best as a military man to protect the Israeli citizens. So it's at a time like this where they appreciate that. So again, while we have people like Benjamin Netanyahu as Prime Minister of Israel, you can expect there to be effectively no space given for the likes of Hamas to get their way in any form whatsoever. So this is going to continue. I bring it back to my key point here, is that when we are considering this conflict, we have to be very altruistic and actually say what our motives are. For me, it's the people. But for South Africa, or the South African government at the very least, they are intent on basically denouncing Israel at every opportunity. The Ramaphosa administration, at the very least, seems to want to position themselves as, let's call it, great diplomats or great negotiators of sort. Every president wants to leave their legacy behind. Basically, he left his legacy, Zuma did.
In the sofa.
Well, the sofa is one of it, but the Ramaphosa regime, at the very least, they want to position themselves as peacekeepers, negotiators, diplomats, etc., etc. And that's why they're going the extra mile with this. The problem with that is when you are clearly partisan, or you've picked your side in trying to be an arbitrator at the very least, you have to at least be able to communicate that in an effective manner. They won't be able to do that with Russia, Ukraine, even though we can all see what's going on. They're clearly doing it with Hamas. So in the end, it's going to backfire, and it's taking us, the South African citizens, down with them. We are going to be known as people who sided with Hamas, irrespective of how this actually comes to an end. And that's not something I want to be associated with when we have a long list of problems back home that our government is seemingly turning a blind eye to.
Bums?
I think the one thing we don't talk enough about when it comes to not just this particular conflict, but almost all of the alignments around the world is the money and how much of a role it plays in the decisions that people, countries, governments, rebels make with regard to this. So when we spoke about the Houthis and the Red Sea channel, the first thing that we spoke about was the cost of that blockade. When we talk about Iran and the role they play in this conflict, we talk about the support that they give to the various players. When we talk about the relationship between Israel and America, it's also about the financial backing and support that sits there. And Kanthan, you alluded to a conversation that has started and is gaining momentum here in South Africa, is about the financial benefit to the ANC of the role that they have decided to take in all of this. And I think if we pay a little bit more attention to those money flows, some of the unraveling, or actually the acceptance that this is going to take a very long time to come to any kind of resolution, then we'll be able to have less emotional conversations. I think if we're just saying the cost of human lives and this and this,
because everyone,
it's about
unless you're a psychopath, no one wants human lives lost. No one actively hopes for death on any front, but that's not how war works. And what you're saying is follow the money.
A friend of mine wanted me to say that today, but it really is about money. A lot of these things are about money, whether it's the Ukraine-Russia environment, the people are the human shield that is put in front of everybody, but actually it's about the money.
Final thoughts from you?
I said at the start of this conflict that Joe Biden is not a friend of Israel. I'm very clear about this. If Trump had still been in power, immediately at the point at which October 7th happened, Trump would have had boots on the ground. The U.S. Special Forces would have been going to go door to door throughout Gaza, and they would be dragging Hamas militants out onto the streets.
You may get your wish in a couple of months' time.
And in fact, what I'm saying is that, so Joe Biden is not a friend of Israel. There's a growing Islamic demographic in the U.S. that votes Democratic, and they're increasingly controlling the narrative from the U.S. point of view. For me, it's very clear that the only way that Israel can continue to rely upon the United States is if Trump gets into power. And if he doesn't, I'm afraid, Israel is up shit creek without a paddle.
Arthur, you get the last word from Israel.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks everybody, and thanks for giving me time this morning. I appreciate it very much. And Joe Biden is a real friend of Israel, and we're very grateful in Israel for him. And our secret sauce of our relationship with the United States is bipartisanship, is that we're not dependent on Republicans or Democrats, but that's a whole different conversation. And one last thought, Gareth, for this morning is, even if you disagree with Israel, even if you have a beef with how we're behaving in this issue or that issue, leave my brothers and sisters in South Africa out of it. The Jews of South Africa are loyal, patriotic South African citizens, have been part of building your country for 180 years. This nonsense about cricket captains is scary to people.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Yeah,
and so
that's just terrific.
And so they're your neighbors, and they're your friends, and they're your colleagues. And if you want to be mad at me and my neighbors, let's go at it. But the South African Jewish community needs to be treated respectfully and watched carefully in these dangerous times.
Okay. Yeah, looked after, more like it. But there we are. Thank you, Arthur. Nice to have you on, and good to see you again. And hopefully we'll chat to you again soon. Koketso, it's great to have you on the show. And I hope we get to have you on. We've got lots to talk about election year this year, so you're going to be back in that seat soon. Kanthan, always a pleasure, always stirring the pot. And we didn't even get to some of the things that you wanted to talk about, but you'll be back. And Pums, as always, thank you.
Very busy show.
Very busy show this morning. We went on for 22 extra minutes. For those people who complain that they don't get their money's worth on the show, you got it this morning. All right, everybody. Cheers. We'll see you tomorrow.